Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Saturday, August 13th, 2022. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can go to weather.gov. It is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to an interactive point-and-click map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left. And by pointing anywhere on that map and clicking, you will get weather forecasts, watches, warnings, advisories for anywhere in the country. Right now, as of this Saturday afternoon, the most notable features are flood watches for potential for flash flooding, rains from scattered heavier thunderstorms, portions of Wyoming down through Utah, southern Nevada into Arizona and southeast California. And also looking into next week, the Sacramento Valley has a potential for some significant heat to occur as temperatures warm there. So that's just some of the information you can gather from that particular site. We have a wind advisory that's going to be in effect from 10 p.m. this Saturday evening through 10 a.m. Sunday morning for the east central Alaska range. Strong southerly gap winds could gust to 50 miles an hour, including areas like Isabel Pass, Donnelly Dome, Black Rapids. Also, elevated surf is expected through Monday from Point Hope down through Kotzebue Sound, north and west side of the Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait. And we have just reached past full moon. That happened Thursday night and Friday morning. And within the next couple of weeks, as we get near new moon, and hopefully we can clear out skies, we're going to be entering the aurora viewing season as we finally get enough darkness at night to view the northern lights. So stay tuned for that as long as we can finally get rid of these clouds. But in this pattern, I'm afraid it's going to continue at least into next week. Wet and somewhat cool August weather will continue here for several more days. Looking at a couple of the FAA webcams, Merrill Field in Anchorage, overcast day, Saturday afternoon with 61 degrees, and it's been a wet July and August for Anchorage. Valdez is also seeing some light rain and fog, 57 degrees. You can see those lower ceilings. And it's going to be a wet period along the Gulf Coast here coming up the rest of this weekend into much of next week. Here are the current advisories. The area in yellow there, East Central Alaska Range, is for that wind advisory that's in effect 10 p.m. Saturday evening through 10 a.m. Sunday morning. For some southerly gap winds gusting as high as 50 miles an hour, especially through places like Isabel Pass. To the west, we anticipate elevated surf of a foot and a half above normal from Point Hope down through Kotzebue Sound and through the north and west side of the Seward Peninsula. And fire danger, although it has come down significantly, at least looking ahead to tomorrow, there is the potential for some high to very high fire danger in portions of the Yukon Flats and up through the middle upper portions of the Tanana Valley. So keep that in mind. But overall, the fire danger situation has improved remarkably here across the state, given the cooler and very wet weather we've seen here for the past month or so now. Low pressure circulation is situated over the southwest portion of the state, kind of right over where the Alaska Peninsula emerges from the mainland, including areas around Kodiak back toward Dillingham, is encompassed by the circulation. And a broad moisture flow coming in off the western Gulf and hitting up across the mountains there, the eastern Chugach Mountains to the eastern Kenai Peninsula, and also at least on the south side of the Alaska Range. And we expect this to hold here. That low is not really going to go anywhere at the surface and up through mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. There will be some colder air filtering down through the Bering Strait and up through portions of the North Slope, so that's going to bring the potential for some snow up that way as we go into tomorrow. Otherwise, right now, this afternoon, Saturday afternoon, there's the low situated there right near Bristol Bay, and some colder air beginning to push south through the Bering Strait. Later tonight, through about 4 a.m. Sunday morning, we'll see areas of, at times, moderate to locally heavy rain, the west side of Prince William Sound, the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, and areas of rain continuing on up in through even portions of the western interior, with some snow breaking out there across along the spine of the Brooks Range into the North Slope. That'll continue there, at least toward the west side of it for Sunday afternoon. Could be an isolated thunderstorm pop-up along the Alcan border. Also, even the Saturday afternoon, we've had a few flashes of lightning reported there from near Eagle and on off toward the south. But otherwise, you see that low still sitting over Bristol Bay, and by the time we get into Monday, there'll be another low lifting out of the North Pacific. That'll be the next surge of moisture. It's going to pivot around that low and head up toward the northeastern Gulf Coast, and especially the northern central panhandle, where they could see some moderate to heavier rain as we go into the middle of next week, Wednesday into Thursday. So low temperatures Sunday morning, 30s up there along the north slope, Arctic coast, 40s to near 50 along the Yukon River, near 50 south central, and lower mid 50s across the panhandle. Still could see some 70s, a few lower 70s there, Yukon Flats along the Alcan border Sunday afternoon, including Eagle and down there toward Northway. Even Fairbanks could flirt with 70. But cooler temperatures, 40s there along the north slope, back through the Seward Peninsula, the lower Yukon Delta. Monday morning lows will generally be above freezing across the state. Some 30s there, north slope and Arctic coast. Otherwise, near 50 south central, and in the 50s across the panhandle with 60s. So a few degrees cooler, 60s east central areas toward the Alcan border, 40s across the north and west, and generally 50s across the south with 60s in the panhandle. Quick check at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, August 19th through the 23rd. Temperatures will remain a bit below normal across much of the state, especially across the southwest and southeast. And precipitation is looking to average a bit above normal in through the eastern and southeast interior across portions of the panhandle, while a little drier than normal conditions may develop there across the west side of the state for a change.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look at your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned Sunday or into the day Monday, widespread IFR conditions are anticipated across the north slope, extending down through areas of the western interior and much of the southwest, as well as in through the western and northern Gulf. We have an area of low pressure, not just at the surface, but on the loft over the southwest, particularly in the vicinity of Bristol Bay. It's helping to push mild, moist air up there, especially into the Gulf areas. Now, on Sunday afternoon, there could be an isolated rumble of thunder, portions of the Yukon Flats toward the Alcan border and west toward the central Yukon Valley. Also, out there just west of the Alaska Range, just in the interior there of the southwest coast. Otherwise, IFR conditions continue along areas of the North Slope, Brooks Range, Arctic coast, southwest coast, Alaska Peninsula, and in through the western northern Gulf. Monday morning, widespread IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, Brooks Range, North Slope, down through the western interior, across areas of the southwest, Alaska Peninsula, especially western and north central Gulf Coast. Also areas of the inner channels and intercoastal mountains of the Panhandle. Monday afternoon still could be an isolated rumble of thunder up there, especially north end of the Yukon Flats, and widespread IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, portions of the central Brooks Range and in through the North Slope, and then as we drop further south along the Alaska Range, especially the western arm in through the southwest coast there toward Bristol Bay, and then along Prince William Sound, eastward toward Yakutat, and out over the lower Gulf, including Kodiak Island. Anaktuvik Pass should generally hold on to IFR conditions on Sunday. Further north, there could be a mix of precipitation or some wet snow, areas of the central North Slope along the spine of the central Brooks Range. Same thing, Atigan Pass, IFR conditions on Sunday. Further south and west, look for IFR conditions in the morning, Lake Clark and Merrill giving way to MVFR. Rainy Pass, also IFR early Sunday, giving way to MVFR. Windy Pass, at least right now, looks like it should generally hold on to MVFR conditions. Further east, Isabel starts out MVFR, becoming VFR. And Mentasta Pass should also see MVFR conditions give way to VFR conditions. It's going to be kind of a split. Generally, MVFR conditions will hold across the south entrance, and VFR, the further north you go, north entrance northward. Tanita Pass, generally MVFR conditions are expected Sunday, and Portage Pass is another one of those splits where the eastern half will be IFR, especially out over Prince William Sound, and the west entrance, generally MVFR conditions will hold on Sunday. And then finally, the northern panhandle, Chilkoot and White, will see VFR conditions Sunday morning give way to MVFR conditions by Sunday afternoon. Freezing levels aloft do come down to near and below 2,000 feet eastern Russia and approaching there the Bering Strait. They bump up to 8 to near 10,000 feet over the northeast, including the Alcan border. And then they rise up as you go westward through the Aleutian chain, upwards of 12 to 14,000 feet central and western Aleutians. Greatest threat for icing will be across areas of the western Alaska range, 8,000 to a flight level of 18,000 feet. Otherwise, a generally broad area of isolated moderate turbulence possible across western portions as well as southern portions of the mainland, including the Kenai Peninsula down through the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. Jet stream level winds at 250 millibars or 30,000 feet shows a low pressure circulation there over the southwest. Ahead of it, southerly winds 65 knots, backside 105 knot northerly wind max pushing across the central Aleutians. At 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, we continue to see a vertically stacked system, low pressure there around Bristol Bay, centered there. With on the backside of it, a broad area of northerly 40 knot winds across the, 30 to 40 knot winds across the northern in through the eastern Bering Sea. Ahead of it, pockets of 35 knot southerly winds from the interior back across areas of the Panhandle to British Columbia. And then finally bringing it down to 3,000 feet. Low pressure circulation remains at the surface or near surface there, Bristol Bay, and the backside of it, a broad area of 30 to 40 knot winds extending from Point Hope, Point Lay southward across the Seward Peninsula and through the YK deltas. And this translates to turbulence. There could be moderate turbulence there up in areas of the northwest as well as surrounding St. Lawrence Island, surface to 3,000 feet. And then there's another pocket there over the southern portion of the Panhandle, surface to 5,000 feet. So if you are able to get off the ground, have a safe flight.
When I first started working here in the early 90s, this is where the glacier was. I mean, where we're walking right now would have been a pile of gravel that had been pushed up by the glacier, and then we would have had 100 to 200 foot high cliffs of ice right here. And as you can see, that's changed quite a bit. And if you look at that in 2 dimensions, you can sort of see the terminus used to be here, now it's back there. That gives you one measure. What that kind of 2-dimensional look doesn't show is how much mass has been lost, that the glacier has just sort of deflated. These 200-foot cliffs of ice have disappeared and pulled back to this gentle sloping glacier you see now.
When I was working in Kenai Fjords National Park, I used the topographic maps to navigate where I was, and I realized that the mapping of the glaciers was really off. The glaciers had receded a lot. There were new rivers and lakes that were establishing where the ice used to be or should have been according to the maps. And so then I did a study on this and found out that we had a 5% loss of glacier ice mass in the Kenai Fjords area between 1950 and 1985. Big change.
You know, one of the most compelling things we do, though, to document glacier change is simply take photographs. We've had repeat photography projects here at the park. They may not give you the most accurate data in terms of how much mass or real specific measurements, but what they do give you is a visual representation that can't be argued with. I mean, it really requires no interpretation.
Understanding what's happening, understanding these processes, and possibly being able to predict what's going to happen in the future is the best that we can do, and that requires science and research.
There's considerable research on climate change in Alaska. The most significant, I would say right now, is the Natural Resources Inventory and Monitoring Program, which is looking at change across a wide variety of vital signs or indicators.
Kenai Fjords National Park is actually a pretty good representation of what's going on globally with regards to glacier ice retreat. There have been studies showing that mountain glaciers are retreating all over the planet. There are probably well over 90% of the glaciers are in retreat status. There are a few that are advancing and some are holding their terminus point. But at Kenai Fjords, the tidewater glaciers are retreating more dramatically, but even the land-based glaciers in the terminus positions are retreating. It's pretty common for all the mountain glaciers. The big mountain glaciers in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, they're mostly in retreat too. We're really entering an interesting phase where what we call the cryosphere, the ice on the planet, is melting.
In the more immediate past, it's clear that since the Pleistocene, glaciers have been retreating. So the idea that glaciers retreat is is no revelation. They've been retreating from across North America for the last 10,000 years. What appears to have changed and what has people's attention is the rate at which they're retreating. In the case of Exit Glacier, we have scientists who've been looking at it. We have evidence that the glaciers left behind, where we can track that retreat for about the last 200 years. And we can say with confidence that in the last decade, that rate has increased.
Terminus mapping is a great way to map a small portion of the ice field. We come out twice a year and we use a GPS to walk the edge of the terminus and map the farthest extent of Exit Glacier. And that allows us to see what type of changes are occurring over the winter accumulation period and the summer ablation period. With that data, that can help us as we witness these changes within the ice field. We can hopefully be able to correlate that with the weather data that we have.
When you look at an ice field that's 750 square miles, when you look at a glacier that towers hundreds of feet high, you get a sense of permanence. You think these things are massive, they're somehow a permanent sort of feature, and yet in a very short period of time, in a matter of a couple of decades, we've seen dramatic change in those things.
At Exit Glacier, we have a time-lapse camera set up on the glacier that allows us to take a couple photos every single day, and then to put that sequence of photos into a video where we can see changes of the glacier and the vegetation phenology throughout an entire year.
Virtually all the glaciers in Alaska are receding. Some glaciers are moving forward. That's not an indication that they're actually growing in size. It's just the rate at which they're slipping down the mountain.
In some cases, some of these glaciers are receding back up onto land, and so they're producing less ice. When you change the glacier systems, you're changing habitat for marine mammals and other wildlife. And the populations of harbor seals have dropped dramatically in the fjords. In 1980, shortly after the establishment of the park, in Island Bay, we had maybe 1,500 harbor seals. Nowadays, it's a few hundred.
In Arctic environments, much of the sunlight that reaches the Earth bounces back because it hits snow and reflects off into space, or ice on the ocean and reflects off into space. That's the albedo effect. When the snow thaws and instead you have rock or vegetation, or when the ice thaws and you have transparent ocean, the sunlight will convert to other wavelengths. It'll convert essentially to warmth. That does not bounce back into the atmosphere as much. So consequently, you get a warming of the ocean, you get a warming of the ground, you get a thawing of frozen soils or permafrost, you get a more rapid thawing of sea ice. So once the ice and once the snow is off of the surface, the rate of warming increases considerably.
If you're driving out to Exit Glacier, you'll actually start to see signs along the side of the road that have dates on them. Visitors sometimes are confused. They think they're elevations or something until they get up to the glacier and realize, oh, those were all date signs along the road that were telling me when the glacier was there. Another thing that's been happening in the Exit Glacier area in recent years is this flooding that comes at a time we're not used to. We're used to having maybe some flooding in the fall when we have a lot of heavy rain. This has suddenly been some flooding that's coming in the middle of the summer, usually not associated with precipitation events. It's associated with warmer weather and melting. When you walk down one of our trails that leads to Exit Glacier, there are a number of ways to get out there, but what used to be the main route is no longer really the main route because of the way the glacier has changed. So this main route to the glacier used to provide dramatic views of the glacier as you walk towards it. In fact, there was a large kiosk built at the end of this trail for people to stop and rest and enjoy the view of the glacier. Now if they stop and rest at this kiosk, people think, why did the park put a kiosk here? Because it looks out at some shrubs. Hey, there's no glacier within view anymore.
The way we solve big problems like this is not all at once. There's a thing called the Sokolov's wedges, and you just take a little bite of the pie, one sliver at a time. So we try to do incremental changes.
When we talk to people about our concerns about climate change, about the changes that are happening to the glacier, we also want to leave them with some idea of what we're doing to mitigate some of the effects of climate change. For example, here at the park, as we retire vehicles out of our fleet, we try to replace them with electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. We've done things like at the Exit Glacier Nature Center, helping to sort of experiment and install a cutting-edge fuel cell, as opposed to running some traditional power source out there that relies on some sort of more greenhouse-producing gas.
My main hope for the future is that people get the message that the planet is changing fairly rapidly in places, particularly places like Kenai Fjords National Park, and that it is, we think, there's good evidence it's a result of atmospheric changes, which are measured in terms of human inputs into the atmosphere.
The rapid rate at which these glaciers are changing now offers us the opportunity to talk about this place as a way of looking into the future. In a lot of parts of the country, climate change issues are a little more subtle, and we can point here and say, look how fast this is changing. This is what the future holds for perhaps a lot of us and a lot of the planet as climate continues to change.
I'm optimistic that people and nature will adapt to change, but my expectation is that change will occur. Time will tell.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and we'll conclude the show starting off with the sea ice edge. The ice continues to slowly melt there along the Beaufort Sea, there along the Arctic coast, not quite as close to the shore, at least the larger pieces that were there past a few weeks. We do continue to see some ice, though, along the Russian coast, and it's actually spilled over and curled around south of the Bering Strait on the Russian side. And we just continue a very slow late summer melt-off at this time frame, nothing too earth-shaking. We do expect winds, though, to be a little brisker here the next couple of days down through the Bering Strait out of the north as a result of low pressure that's going to be setting up not just at the surface but aloft along the northwestern interior as we go through early in the week. Otherwise, for the southeast panhandle, inner channels, we'll see some gale force gusts there up to 35 knots. Petersburg waves 4 feet, especially up through Lynn Canal. Otherwise, southeast winds 20 knots. Outer coast, look at small craft advisories, 25 knot winds from the southeast, especially south of Gustavus off of Sitka and Craig. For Monday, winds across the inner channels will be southeasterly, 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. And the outer coastal areas of the Gulf, 15 to 20 knots, and waves generally 5 to 6 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, winds will be southeasterly, Prince William Sound, 15 knots, waves 2 feet. Southeast winds 10 to 15 knots off of the Kenai, and 15 knots there at the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves of 4 feet. Otherwise, variable winds mid and upper Cook Inlet at 10 knots and waves only a couple of feet. For Monday, look for Prince William Sound, northeast winds 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. Easterly winds off the Kenai, 15 knots and waves 4 feet. And then within Cook Inlet, variable winds around 10 knots and waves 2 to 3 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island will see generally variable winds around 10 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. But as we get down the length of the peninsula, winds will turn northwesterly to 20 knots with waves running 4 to 5 feet, either the Pacific or Bering side. And on Monday, winds will be northeasterly, 15 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island. But as we cross the peninsula, winds will be north-northwest, 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side, and 4 feet Bristol Bay, upwards to 6 to 8 feet there north of Sand Point. The eastern Aleutians on Sunday will see northerly to northwesterly winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet either side, and variable winds, central Aleutians around 10 knots, and waves generally running a few feet. For Monday, winds will be northwesterly, 15 to 25 knots there, the eastern Aleutians, with waves 5-6 feet on the North Pacific side, 5 to 6 feet on the Bering side, turning southerly, AKwx westward, and picking up to 20-25 knots, and waves anywhere from 4 to as high as 7 feet. Stronger winds will exist Sunday afternoon just off of the southwestern coast, especially there off the lower Yukon Delta between there and St. Lawrence Island. 30-knot northwesterly winds turning northerly around 20-25 knots. Waves as high as 9 feet there northwest of Nunavik Island and just southeast there of St. Lawrence. And then on Monday, northwesterly to west winds 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 feet in Norton Sound, 5 to 6 feet off of Hooper Bay and south of St. Lawrence and northwest of Nunavik Island. Easterly winds 15 knots and waves 5 feet in the vicinity of St. Paul, St. George. Across the Arctic coast, Beaufort Sea, northeast winds 20 knots, waves generally running about 4 feet. As we turn down through the lower Chukchi Sea and in through the Bering Strait, we expect north-northwest winds to accelerate to 30 knots, with waves as high as 8 to 9 feet there as we pass through the Bering Strait. And then on Monday, winds along the Arctic coast, northeast 10 to 15 knots, waves a few feet. They pick up northeast to north, turning northerly there through the lower Chukchi Sea and northwesterly coming through the Bering Strait at around 25 knots and waves generally 5 to 6 feet. So early Sunday, as we go into Sunday and Monday for that matter, low pressure continues to linger there over Bristol Bay in the southwest part of the state. Areas of rain, especially along the Gulf Coast, and pockets of rain and rain showers in through the interior and along the Alaska Range, with some snow or mixed precipitation there along the north slope and spine of the Brooks Range. For Monday, we do anticipate another low to be lifting out of the North Pacific, and it's going to send another round of moderate to locally heavier rainfall in through the northeastern Gulf Coast and in through the central and northern portions of the Panhandle, especially as we get through the midweek around Wednesday into Thursday. So that wraps up the show for this Saturday evening. Thank you for watching, and join me again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.